It's a new year, and it's a new month, and it's going to be starting over at the beginning. We're going to start at step one. And I hope we're going to maybe deliver a bit of a message of hope tonight. That's what we want to do. That's what we hope to do every week. I just have to ask you, being a new year and a new month and a new step, are you guys ready for the miracles to happen? Yes, we're ready for the miracles to happen, and if we work our program, they do happen. They come in the form of the promises. In step one, and we talked about in December, the spiritual principle of step one is honesty, and I think that's the principle that we need to enact in our lives and everything that we do, not just when we're working our program, but in all aspects of our lives. As we look at the steps, we find some very powerful terms used. Words that kind of affect us a little bit from time to time, but defects of character, wrongdoings, shortcomings. This language was never meant to make us feel bad about ourselves, but was to get us to confront our self-righteous pride and ego. We learn as we work through the steps, the language is strong, but when we become rigorously honest, not just honest, but rigorously honest with ourselves and with the others around us, we realize that the word choice is right on. When we can do this, we don't feel bad, but in fact, we start to feel some freedom. Maybe freedom that we haven't felt for a long time. Worded as they are, the steps hold us accountable for our behaviors, both past and present, and create a safe place for us to begin our recovery journey. Recovery may come as a shock to you, but recovery can't be done on our own. I know we spend times by ourselves, maybe in prayer and in meditation, but our recovery doesn't take place in isolation. It happens in our fellowship. The fellowship of AA, NA, CA, CMA, and every other 12-step program that exists out there is a fellowship that we need to join and we need to be part of. It happens with the connections we make with like-minded men and women who share their experience, their strength, and their hope. Through this, we cultivate gratitude. Through this fellowship, we become aware we are not alone. If we participate and we do service work, the miracles will start to happen. So for those of you that are not in the program and aren't sure what step one is, it says this: we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and we can substitute drugs or sex or food or relationships in there, that our lives have become unmanageable. The first step in most things that we do in life are fairly easy. The first time we do something, it's kind of easy, but not so in the 12-step programs. While it may not be the most difficult, it's a step that causes a lot of people a lot of difficulty. This is a step that if we don't get it and we don't work it, recovery becomes very, very elusive. I suppose a little translation for this step could be as simple as, there is a power that wants to kill me, and I'm here to tell you that it will if it's left untreated. A character defect that goes along with this step, or at least it did prior to working it, would be denial. We are in denial of how serious our problems have become and still believe that we can change things up just a little bit here and there and we can get a different end result. But we know that doesn't work. I couldn't tell you how many times people have come to Brad and I in particular and said, you know, we want to work with you guys. We want you to teach us how to drink like normal people. How often we've heard that. I just want to learn how to drink like a normal person. Well, it doesn't happen when we have that little addiction gene in us. We can never drink like normal people. There are many aspects of this step to look at, and I'm going to concentrate on the first half of it. We admitted we were powerless over whatever our addiction is, and next week Brad's going to bring up the tail end of that. Our lives have become unmanageable. We is the first word in this step. This implies that recovery and healing happens or takes place in a community, not in isolation. I want to stress here that this is not, and I repeat not, a new idea. It wasn't even a new idea when Bill W. wrote the big book. Nope, it goes back a lot further than that, and our scripture talks about that tonight. Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 to 12. I don't know if we have it up there or not, but I'll read it. Now, the exact time that this scripture was written was around 950 BC, so a long time ago. We believe it was written by Solomon near the end of his life. He is a teacher, and he's trying to make sense of everyday stuff that goes on out there in the world. Not uncommon from what we do today. We're trying to make sense of things. And what the scripture says, it says, 2 people are better than one. For they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm if you're by yourself or if you're alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. So what's this saying? Quite simply, it is support of friends and healthy relationships are absolutely necessary for successful recovery. When we fall down, we need help to get up again. If we stand alone, we are essentially vulnerable to all our inner enemies. We must learn to trust others, to reach out to others, and to admit our need for the others around us. This will give us added strength, wisdom, and protection against our dependencies and our compulsions. So think about this. Years before Christ was here on earth, they were saying, in essence, we need a sponsor. It's really, really quite neat. They needed sponsors before Christ was here, and they need sponsors today. This isn't such a new concept. It's not just an AA thing. And always when we do our scripture, we give it to Bill, and Bill does a little work in the background for it. And Bill, I just want to thank you for all your hard work that you do on that and how much it means to us to have that help. So thanks for that. In essence, the message of the book is that we can't go it alone or have limits to our power. The writer finds that we are laboring with life and have an overblown conception of our power and unrealistic hopes and aspirations. He concludes that this lifestyle is meaningless. Our single-handed effort to control our situation is futile. So looking a bit further along this step, we admitted powerless over whatever our addiction is. Powerlessness, and that's one of the most difficult things for most guys and likely a lot of women. In the beginning, we get all caught up in the problem. We try harder to fix our problem with wrong methods, trying to bring the right results, and it doesn't work, and I know many of us have tried that. Then we try harder using the same method, expecting different results, but what happens? Nothing. We end up getting the same result, which isn't good as a rule. That is the insanity of our disease. Step 1 tells us we'd better stop and name the problem and become willing to admit defeat before we rush in to fix things. I suppose this is like being in spiritual kindergarten and admitting that we're in trouble in the first step. This is the beginning step towards those miracles that we talk about, and the miracles of peace and serenity. To do this, we must be honest, which is a change from our norm. In our addiction, honesty eluded us for the most part. Dishonesty, pretense, evasion, and denial were the norm. The Bible puts a great deal of value on honesty, as does the Big Book. Not just honesty, but as we always say, rigorous honesty. The falsehood we put off in step 1 is the belief we didn't really need any help. I can do it on my own. That we can manage our lives successfully without any help whatsoever. In step 1, we admit that this is not true. When we do that, new and better ways of living keep coming up. Admit we're powerless, and suddenly we get the power. This is the strange thing about this disease. If we admit powerlessness, then we start getting the power to start our recovery journey. This next part is one that most folks, and guys for sure, have most difficulty with, and that's admitting being powerless over anything. Being powerless does not mean that we're incompetent or helpless or that we have no power at all. It means that we cannot rely on our will alone to achieve wholeness and peace. Willpower alone is not powerful enough. We see our powerlessness when we try to solve problems through willpower, determination, commitment, and trying harder. It just isn't successful. If there are any changes at all, they will only be for a temporary period of time. How many of us tried different methods to control drinking? I remember telling myself that when I went out to a social function, I'd have a drink, the first one, then I'd have a straight pop, and then the next one I would have a drink. But my problem was that instead of having a single, I would have a double. Then I would have another Coke, and then I'd have a triple. And by the end of the night, I had the same end result. I got drunk. That's what I wanted to do. But I was kidding myself that I was changing things up by only drinking every second drink. We may try to control the drinking and the drugging of someone close to us. Trying harder and trying hardest will not make us powerful enough to achieve any success controlling other people. We may promise not to take on more things when asked. I still have trouble with this one. So we're really, really busy and somebody comes and asks us and we swear that we'll never take on another project until these other ones are done. But when they ask, we don't have the willpower to say no. We do it anyway. If any of you have tried these things, you'll know what powerlessness is all about. For me, my powerlessness comes after I've taken the first drink. Not the second, third, or fourth, but the first one. I can't stop no matter how good my intentions might be. The Apostle Paul talked about powerlessness when he said, I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. That was in Romans 7, verse 18, I believe. Paul realized that the solution to his problem would need to involve more than just increased willpower. The point here is that willpower alone is not sufficient to enable us to make permanent changes. Trying harder didn't work for the Apostle Paul and doesn't work for us either. Sometimes the answer to our problems comes from a little bit of knowledge that we may have, and we can go ahead and fix those problems if we have the required knowledge. But often the problems are completely baffling to us, and we must admit our powerlessness over them and what to do about them. So what do? We turn to our higher power, the God of our understanding, and ask for help. This works for any problems in our lives, and it absolutely does work if we work it. My recommendation is to go to the standby serenity prayer, because this kind of fits everywhere. And it's simple. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We can put every problem on one side or the other of this prayer. A situation can either be accepted or changed. If we are powerless over it, we first have to accept that we can do something about it. Remember, if we have a situation that we cannot change and we're trying to accept it, we're just going to make things that much worse. Some way, all of us who are in recovery have been given the wisdom to take this first step. This separates us from those who are still out there using. I want to say if we take this step and we work this step and we surrender to our disease, we will get the power necessary to move forward to the next step. In doing this, we are opening the door for many miracles that will happen in our lives as a result of working our 12 steps. I just want to take a couple of minutes and maybe talk a little bit about working the steps, but I heard a very dark message on Wednesday night that many people were upset with, and I want to just counter that a little bit and let you know that things aren't as bad as what you heard Wednesday night. I heard that we're all going to go back out, that we all could die, that we should all just go out and have a good time because eventually that's what's going to happen. I have to tell you that relapse does not have to be part of recovery if we work our program. Our program might be different for each of us, but in early recovery, your program should include meetings. How many meetings should you go to? We recommend 3 a week. But I know guys in treatment centers are doing 15 and 20 meetings a week. So what does go on What does going to a meeting mean? I guess that's what I was trying to say. It means you go to a meeting and you engage. You share if you feel up to it, and you listen to what's being said. You reach out to the newcomer. You talk to them after the meeting. You offer to go for coffee. You share phone numbers and exchange numbers. You shut off your phone before you go into the meeting, because I don't believe that sitting in a meeting, texting your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or checking out the hits on Plenty of Fish or Tinder, or just reading, right? Just reading your emails doesn't constitute going to a meeting. Going to a meeting means going and engaging in that meeting, talking to people, sharing, giving somebody else a sense of hope, or you getting a sense of hope from what you're hearing. Getting up and going out for a smoke halfway through is equally inappropriate. The greatest gift you can give to another human being, and especially a newcomer in a meeting who's scared to death, is your undivided attention. So we talk about sponsors. So we say get a sponsor early in recovery. It doesn't have to be the perfect person. I recommend to you to get someone with at least 5 years of sobriety or close to it. Someone that's working the steps, is working a good program, and knows how to give you guidance. Don't be afraid to get an AA sponsor, even if you're in one of the other 12-step groups, because I believe there's longer sobriety in the AA program. When you're in a meeting, I want you to ask people who have more than 5 years. So when you're looking at them and you're listening to them and you know, or whatever, ask them, who's got more than 5 years sobriety here? Hold up your hand. All right, so for those of you who don't, look at these people. I'm going to ask some of these people to hang around after the service. Go up to them and ask them, how is it that you've made it to 5 years? What do you do to do it? Because you know the first part of how it works says, rarely have we seen a person fail who thoroughly follows our path. So those are the paths you want to follow. You want to follow the successful people, the people that are out there doing whatever it is that they need to do, and likely going to any lengths to achieve it. Those are the people you want to follow. And if you follow them, you'll have the same results if you do what they do. Get a home group that you can be accountable to. Get to know the key players in that home group and start doing some service work there. Start making the coffee, cleaning up. You don't dump ashtrays anymore. When I first started, we had to dump the ashtrays, but we're not allowed to do that anymore. But clean up the room, straighten up the chairs, do whatever. Do the service work that's inquired. Humble yourself, because you're not that good. You can do all of that stuff. Build a recovery community, one that you can count on for support. Build a recovery community of people that become your friends, or people that you can go out and do fun activities with. They'll give you good advice and good guidance, and there's somebody you can call when you're, excuse the expression, but itchy, bitchy, and twitchy, and you just don't know what to do next. You can call these people, right? And they'll guide you. They'll guide you. Prayer. You've heard it many times from both Brad and I. Prayer is such an important part of recovery. And you know what, I deal with a lot of people that don't totally have a concept of what their higher power is yet, but even if they pray, they get results. So I'm telling you, you need to frame your day in prayer. You start in the morning with a prayer that guides you through the day. What issues have you got coming up today that you need help with? And you ask for help for those things. You might pick a defective character for that day and say, help me reduce that defective character. At the end of the day, you want to do prayers of gratitude. You want to thank your Creator for getting you through the day clean and sober, for helping you with whatever problems might have come up. And as you go through the day, as I talked before, the Serenity Prayer really, really works well. And you can use it, and you can do it in 2 seconds, 3 seconds. If things are going bad, if you're overwhelmed, if you're not handling things well, stop. Take a deep breath. Say the Serenity Prayer, and I'll guarantee you things will change right after that. Service work, start doing things for others, start doing 12-step work and volunteering in and out of the recovery community. All the volunteer work doesn't necessarily have to be with recovery. We do lots of volunteer stuff around here. Volunteering and 12-step and service work gets us out of our selfish self-centeredness and humbles us a little bit, and we can move forward in our sobriety. You need to stay away from risky places, risky people, and risky things. And these may include your family. Might include your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Might include your mom or your dad, your sister, your brother. It doesn't matter. If you want to stay clean and sober, you have to make those changes. Don't get into any relationships, Dylan. Sorry, that just slipped out. I'm sorry, Dylan. Don't get into any relationships until you have a year sobriety, and don't get into any relationships with people that don't have a year's sobriety. Otherwise, it's a recipe to go back out. Once you're comfortable and really comfortable in your stage 1 recovery, you've got some good sobriety under your belt, things are going well, you're working through your steps, and maybe it's time to start working on stage 2 recovery when you feel you can. I know Brad and I talk a lot about this, and stage 2 recovery is dealing on all those feelings and issues that are down here in your heart, the resentments, the abuse, all of that, the shame and the guilt of all those things. When we start working on those things, and suddenly our compulsion to use leaves us. But we can't do that until we've gone well through stage 1 recovery. And I think this year we're going to get more into stage 2 recovery as we do our messages, but it's a very important thing to do. Changing your thinking. Practice and practice and practice and practice calling your sponsor when there's no reason to call them. Okay? So that when you get a craving, when you get the compulsion to go out and use, you would rather pick up the phone and talk to your sponsor than pick up the phone and talk to your dealer. And it seems to me that the easier, softer way, which many of us look for, is phoning your sponsor. Because if I decide I've got to go out, then I got to figure out how I'm going to get to the liquor store, what route I'm going to take to go to the liquor store, what bottle am I going to buy, what am I going to do with it after I've bought it, how am I going to hide it from my wife and my family and from Brad, right? And then I got to do bottle management after all of that. Seems to me the one decision to phone your sponsor is much easier than trying to figure out all that other stuff. So get in the habit of calling your sponsor in the good times so that when the bad times come, you can make that one decision and call him. If you do these things, chances are relapses will be far and few between. Your sobriety will increase dramatically. You'll start knitting days together into weeks, into months, and into years, and you'll continue to work your program. Dr. Bob did a prescription for recovery years ago, and I made copies of a few of them. If you want a copy of it, come and see Brad or I after. But it's quite simple. His prescription back in 1935 for recovery was 12 steps practiced in all our affairs. Trust a higher power and clean house. Share experiences, strength, and hope. Stay active in service. Live one day at a time for the rest of your life. A handshake, a smile, a hug as often as possible. That was his prescription, and we know that it works.